Hi, and welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, Chair of the Loyalty Summit, and with me today, I'm joined by Mark Ross Smith from Loyalty Status Co. You probably know them as StatusMatch.com, and you may know Mark. Regular attendees at the Loyalty Summit will know Mark. He's been an attendee, a speaker for many years now, and was formerly the head of the program at Malaysia Airlines Enrich frequent flyer program. So many people know him from that as well. Mark, let me bring you on the screen here. Hi and welcome.
Hey David, you're right. I think about been going to the Loyalty some events about 6 years now.
I want to say it's like about 5 or 6 years now. Yeah, it's been a long time. So any of our regular attendees will certainly know you, and we've talked, and you've been on the Loyalty Leaders podcast before. We've talked about loyalty. We've talked about status. We've talked about frequent flyer programs. Pretty much everything available to talk about. So your insights are deep and wide. But today I want to specifically talk about Loyalty Status Co., which you're the CEO of. And most people probably know you as StatusMatch.com. And you've been doing a lot of cool things and innovative things the last few years, been winning a lot of startup and loyalty awards. So a lot of people, most people in the industry, and certainly most of the frequent flyer programs, if not all, are well aware of who you are, what you do. But in terms of our listeners, what I wanted to do today is not really talk about that. I'm fascinated to talk about sort of the journey and the backstory behind Status Match and Loyalty Status Co. and sort of how it came to be and how you ended up to where you are today to basically status matching as a full-time business. Servicing, and some of the very innovative campaigns for world-leading global airlines that you've been running the last few years. So could I probe and tell me if anything's off limits, but really, can you tell us a little bit about the backstory and the journey of how you got to where you are today with Status Match and Loyalty Status Co.?
Yeah, I like telling the story. Most people don't realize that I'm actually an entrepreneur. I'm not an airline guy. I just happen to be in the industry now for 10 or so years, and got into it almost by accident because I was a frequent flyer for a long time myself, a legit business traveler going all around the world, status with airlines and hotels. And this is about 2005, about 10 years ago. I'd moved to Hong Kong. I was living in Australia, moved to Hong Kong. And when I moved there, I sent an email to the head guys at Cathay Pacific at the time, and I said, "Hey, look, I'm super top elite status with a competing airline. Can you give me a status match? I'm moving to Hong Kong. I want to move my business to Cathay as well." And they, it took about 3 or 4 weeks to get a reply to that email. I was very polite, no. In fact, they offered me silver status. And I was very much a top tier at another carrier, and I thought, this is a bit odd. Why would they only offer me silver status? Status Match as a concept is not a new idea. It's been around since 1986. So airlines, they understand what a status match is, what it's supposed to achieve. And so in my mind, I'm like, I'm spending all this money on travel. Do you want some? They're saying, no, I just didn't get it. Just didn't compute in my mind. And so I hit up Eva Air. I sent an email to them as well. I said, "Can you be status?" I said no. So I went to Singapore Airlines. Never got a reply. I thought this is really odd. How can airlines not want my business? Because I know how much I spent on travel the last few years. And keep in mind, I just turned 30 years old, and I'd already hit lifetime status with an airline just at this point. So there's a lot of money to get there. So, and that's what really kickstarted the journey. Putting my entrepreneur hat on, I'm thinking, Status Match is not a new idea. It's been around since the 1980s. Airlines have clearly not cracked it, right? No one has there's no system, there's no process out there. There's no standard, do this, and you can get this. Every airline and hotel seem to be doing their own thing. And there's
a lot of friction in it too. I mean, you talked about the frustration with that experience just there, but when I think about you and I work in the industry, we've worked with a lot of airlines and a lot of programs, over the years, and often on the elite status program. And when we think about the status programs that have been in effect, prior to you coming along, the reality is there's friction. There's a lot of fraud. There's delays. There's unfriendly experiences. There's unfriendly policies. And there's opaque policies as well, which often don't make any sense. A legitimate high value customer might be interested in moving their business across, and often it's not because they're shopping around or they've necessarily had a bad experience with the previous carrier, but perhaps their work location has changed. And especially, if you think about, I'm based in the US, for example, it's very much the hub and spoke model. If you live in certain cities, one carrier or two carriers might be dominant. Your preferred carrier may not be. Outside of the US, like literally you may now be commuting regularly to a different country or a different city that's not served by your preferred frequent flyer program. There's plenty of legitimate reasons why you might be interested in trying out a new airline that aren't necessarily, I just want to shop around and try them all and I'm not particularly loyal. That doesn't represent, every potential StatusMatch acquisition member out there. But you're looking at your potential new airline and you're not even listed as a potential person to match in, or they're not matching to the top tier. And yet they are, but it's in the background. And if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know to apply or to reach out. And the only people that do know it are the people that are trying to game the system. So it's almost the inverse of what the brands are looking for. The wrong people know about how to game it, and the right people don't have an opportunity to come in through the front door. So it's a very frustrating system, this sort of legacy approach to status matching. I know you're going to agree on that, but any additional sort of comments on that sort of background to that situation?
In my example, I sent emails to two airlines and one of them didn't reply. So, and I'd move countries. Like it's a legitimate, I'd move thing. I'm, looking for, I get a new phone number, I get a new bank account, and you get a credit card, get a new airline, So obviously didn't get status with Cathay, which means they didn't get a credit card there. I got something else, they miss out a lot. But thank you to them because it makes for a great story about how I started the business now. So thank you, Cathay. You're right. There are a lot of frustrations. If you're like a gold, platinum in the top sort of two tiers of an airline, presumably you're spending anywhere from 10, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 a year on flights, right? And it's just not a cool experience when that has the capability to spend that much on travel. They reach out to you and say, "Hey, I want to try you guys out for the first time. I've moved cities, I've changed jobs, something's happened, something's triggered. Or I'm just annoyed with the other airline. I want to try you guys," and then there's no reply. Like, David, if you email me and say, "Hey, I want to pay you $100," I'm going to invoice you in the next 5 minutes, right? And you got airlines over here like don't care about $100,000. Like, I don't get it. So yeah. Anyway, I thought someone's got to create a standardized system around this. Someone's got to put a process in place where everyone understands the landscape. People understand the rules. And to your point, starts attracting the right type of people, not the people that know these, quirks from the forums. And if you do this and edit this, you get this. And, so the kind of the mix of people that are doing status matches today versus 10 years ago, very different, very different. It's, the fundamentals of the same. It's kind of like a car, right? It's a car from the 1980s. Still got four wheels, still gets you from A to B, but the status match of today is like a Tesla. Under the hood is totally different. Gets you a lot faster, does a lot more, makes a lot more money than it used to as well. So we've sort of changed that whole sort of landscape. And then, we launched this in 2020, in the worst time in aviation to launch a startup, I will say. We launched it, three of us, Stu, Phil, and myself. We launched it end of 2020. We didn't go out and raise money. We didn't do the traditional startup route. We thought, let's bootstrap it. Let's just, see how this works. We launched with Frontier Airlines end of 2020. And the whole concept here was to help accelerate the airline recovery. Airlines needed cash, funny enough. We thought, well, let's start it. So we launched the world's first paid status match, where you paid an application fee to apply to get a match. And obviously when there's fees involved, the customer pays, suddenly that's how we make money out of it. And what that did is it started bringing a different type of customer. If you're willing to pay a fee, you're not just a tire kicker. Well, you're less likely to be a tire kicker because you put something on the line, right? And since then we've what I'll call like version 3 of StatusMatch now, where there's like ancillaries and upsells all through the StatusMatch process. And so we've taken what used to be a really clunky or quite frankly shitty experience for most people doing a status match into this really slick, beautiful UX experience. It's a really great brand experience for people that are now trying a new brand for the first time. They go through this process and go, wow, this airline was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I've put in a bunch of details. I got like a tracking number. I could see everything on the process. I could see they tried to sell me some things in that to make it better, and not shitty things like airlines sell you like insurance and seats and bags and stuff like that. We sell people like legitimate stuff like upgrades, things that people want to buy. And what it does, it creates a new ancillary revenue stream for loyalty to the point where, status match type customer acquisition products now regularly feature in the top 5 revenue streams for most airline loyalty programs.
It's interesting you talk about revenue stream. I mean, when I think about, just as you were talking there, I'm sort of thinking about the evolution of frequent flyer programs, and 6-7 years ago, as you know, I did a lot of work on bringing to the mainstream conversation just how much money frequent flyer programs make, but specifically from co-brand revenue agreements from banks and things like that. Now, of course, since the pandemic, and a lot of that has been very publicly disclosed in securitization agreements to the market. Now that's common knowledge and common understanding amongst average folk about how frequent flyer programs make money. But what's interesting when I think about the design of programs, is that there's always been this sort of reward aspect, which is about the points and the miles. You earn frequent flyer miles for traveling or from the credit card or from shopping with partners on the ground, and then you redeem them for free flights. And on the side, there's always been sort of the elite status program or the recognition element, and that's always really been about legitimate bum-in-seat frequent flyers, your business consultants and, McKinsey consultants and things like that are flying, every week of the year. And for those people to have the gold and the platinum and the diamond statuses and things like that. There's always been sort of almost different, almost a silo. The elite recognition program has almost been a silo off to the side, but it's also sort of been this case of, hey, all the money comes through from the credit cards and the people accruing the miles because the frequent flyer program sells the points and the miles to the bank or to other retailers or to other programs. And that's always been sort of the direct revenue into an airline frequent flyer program, whereas the status program has always sort of been about, looking after and recognizing and retaining your valuable actual flyers. The person who spends $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a year on actual airline fares, the status program's sort of all been about them, because at some point for a real frequent flyer who's flying every week, you got 2-3 million airline points or miles in your account just from flying. You kind of don't care about going to get a credit card to earn some more, or shopping with a partner, or, through the dining program, because that's not what motivates you. But it's interesting now, as we sort of come out of the pandemic, and we sort of saw a little bit of this before the pandemic, not so much in the US, but internationally we did, some credit cards starting to come with things like some status credits, or some sort of status contribution. And all of a sudden now what we're seeing, and now, of course, the US airlines, they play catch up, but then they sort of lead the way. They're a bit of an anomaly like that. But around the world, we're seeing various aspects of the status program being monetized. And whether that be that you could now earn status from spending on the credit card or from engaging with other partners on the ground, not just from flying. There's sort of this old school philosophy, school of thought in the frequent flyer program world, and we know a lot of program managers that think like this, where they really believe that status should only be for the people that actually earn it from flying. But the new age school of thought is that actually there's a lot of money to be made from the status program, from allowing status points or status credits to be earned from channels that generate revenue. Obviously, credit cards and partners are the key aspect of that. But when we think about status matching and paid status matches, that brings in a whole other aspect of direct revenue specifically for the status portion of the frequent flyer program. So now you have these frequent flyer conglomerates that are earning a gazillion dollars from the traditional point selling of points and miles, and now realizing that status itself can be monetized within that. And I mean, are you able to sort of put a dimension on how big a pot are we talking about here for airlines?
It's a lot of questions there.
Well, let me phrase it more simply. Let me phrase it more simply, Mark. We know how many zeros there are about how much money airlines make from selling points and miles specifically to banks around the world. We know that, and then we're talking in the billion, across international airlines, tens of billions of dollars. When we're talking about the potential value of the status monetization, how does that sort of pale in comparison?
I'll throw a couple of numbers at you. So, in a typical airline, your top 5% of customers, your elite sort of loyalty members, they buy about 30% of the seats. So think 30% of airline revenue, which is a lot of money. Think about them, what they contribute. So keep that, and I'll throw this other number here. Airlines have been very focused on points and miles, credit cards, banks, this kind of stuff for a long time, and they've got hundreds of people, teams. You know, it's got the attention of the CFO, it's got attention of investors, the board. Everyone's kind of like, let's sell more miles, a lot of money in this stuff. And then you've got the elite status part of the loyalty program, and generally there's a couple of people, mid-level managers, just sort of trotting along, just running its thing. So you've got this thing over here, the status, which is responsible for indirectly about 30% of total airline revenue. And then you got over here hundreds of people focused on selling points and miles. Now, 30% of airline revenue, I can tell you, is a lot more than selling points and miles in terms of cash coming in the door. And so what we recognized a while ago is StatusMatch is the first step in this status monetization journey. And because people understood what StatusMatch was, people, airlines, consumers, everyone kind of got it already. So we sort of jazzed it up, put a bunch of fees around it, put some ancillaries around it, brought new value to everyone around the process there. But it's more than just StatusMatch. And that's why we have transitioned to, we've kind of known as the StatusMatch guys, and not a bad thing, but, now we're the loyalty status guys, because it's all about status. To your point is, we're creating more stuff. StatusMatch is one of 4 things we do around elite status monetization in new ways, because quite frankly, people are demanding it. You've got these people that got status. Think about when you lose status every year, or you're about to drop down. You've got gold, you're about to lose it, might drop silver or to nothing. And at that point, people are willing to open their wallets and pay money. A bunch of airlines are already monetizing that, not in the best way, but they're doing a good, not bad job at it. And it's just basically free money to the airline. Because think about it, if you pay a fee to keep your status, I'm making up, you pay a few hundred, some airlines are charging thousands of dollars for this. You pay thousands of dollars to keep your platinum status. Guess which airline you're going to fly next? It's not a competitor, it's them. And so it kind of, you lock yourself in. You pay to be loyal. So it's a win-win. And
good deal with the airline.
There's a heap of ways to monetize around that sort of status area. So that's what we're focused on. We're not doing points and miles. We're doing everything around status. We see huge opportunity there. I call it the next $100 billion of ancillary revenue that this will create for airlines. And looking in the media recently, there's at least 2 airlines looking at Chapter 11 bankruptcy type stuff. So the more cash they can get in the door, the better. And I think part of that journey is creating new revenue streams, high margin revenue streams, similar to points and miles, but in different way. Things that add real value, because some of these airlines live and die by ancillary revenue, and they need this kind of stuff. So the more they can get, the better. And what that ultimately means is, if you've got what I call the right people paying the right amount of money, so your gold and platinum's paying a lot more because they want to buy more, because they want the extra whatevers. In some ways, it kind of helps billions of other travelers who just want, the cheap tickets to fly from A to B. It helps indirectly subsidize them, because you make a lot of money over here. You don't need to make.
I mean, it's always been a truism that your top, your top members are always subsidizing the base and the new members. But a question I have, you sort of mentioned it, that they're happy to pay when we talk about, say, our gold and platinum members, that they're happy, because you can imagine when you think about it, all of a sudden, it's like, well, status was a reward. It was recognition of me being loyal in the past to the airline. So first, as a member, I'm loyal. And then what comes next is I get those published benefits and sometimes the soft unpublished benefits, recognizing me, making me feel warm and fuzzy, looking after me when things go wrong, access to lounges, priority queues, things like that. And that's a reward back to me in recognition of my past loyalty. Now what we're saying is, okay, well, let's add another dimension to that of, well, if I want to switch airlines, I've got to pay, or maybe I didn't fly as much because I got young kids, maybe change jobs, something like that, move locations, and now I need to pay to keep it. I need sometimes maybe a significant amount of money to keep it. You could argue that, well, that's better than losing it if you value it, if you value the benefits and you value the status. To the airline, okay, maybe you could. There's a fine line, isn't it? But, you want this person to stay because this person was previously a valuable, regular, legitimate frequent flyer. So you want to give them a path to retain. To use your retain status example, you want to give them a path to retain their status rather than losing them. You don't mind monetizing that, but there's a fine line between milking that customer and then upsetting them, and so actually then they get upset with you, annoyed, and they leave and defect anyway and go elsewhere, or you just simply lose them and who knows what happens to them in the future, versus monetizing them, keeping them happy, keeping them inside the tent and inside the family, even though maybe their flying might have dropped off. There's a balance there, right?
Let's be clear, airlines are businesses, so they're here to make money. So they're not happy. They're not family. They're here to make money. So I'll just put that out there first. But to your point, sometimes in your example of people that are losing status and some airlines are trying to charge $2,000-$3,000, this kind of big money for it. Sometimes it's a deliberate intention. It's kind of saying, look, it was worth this. You didn't fly enough. No, just life. Stuff happens, right? We can't all keep super elite diamond 1K whatever forever, right? Some of us can, most of us can't, and so it's pretty normal to sort of drop down. But what's happened is at that point you're now educated. You're educated for life on how status works, the benefits of it. So the chances of you wanting that at some point in the future, or some offer comes along, hey David, get this credit card, blah 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 blah, or do this and get this. You're much more likely to be receptive to it because you're like, you know what? I remember back in the day, I had gold status. I got to go in the lounge. I was first aboard. I got an upgrade. Everyone's got this story about when they had status, and that sort of is emotionally branded in their mind. So this is how status is very powerful, and it's powerful in ways that points and miles just simply can never achieve.
And it's interesting you say that because you've heard me talk about this before, but the academic research backs that up as well. Is that those that have previously held status have a higher propensity to be open to doing the behavior to earn or re-earn status again in the future, even if they've lost it in the meantime. The fact, as you say, because they know what it means to have that priority, to have that lounge access, all the rest of it. So the academic theory and research actually backs that up.
But the trick is you've got to own it legitimately the first. You can't just go giving out gold to the world for free, because you give it for free, It's never valued. They've got to do the hard yards to get there, and
it has to be a hand
to get there. But they have to do something. They can't just selling it doesn't really. You get money, but that doesn't really work long term. So there's ways to what we call managing people on the way up and then managing on the way down. And so when you manage the up and the down flow, there's a lot of points to make money in that process, that flow. And today we see most airlines that just not that great at it. So that's kind of where we're sort of slotting in, trying to, to be frank, we're just creating stuff that we wished existed.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I'm a frequent flyer myself. I got status like 4 different airlines right now. I can't possibly keep them all.
Yeah.
And, unless someone's paying me to fly around the world, or not. So, now we're looking at how do we create products that help me retain status? I've got my own problems to solve here. It's funny enough, we talked to the same thing, a couple of airlines about it. Pitched some ideas like, here's how I want to retain status with you. What do you think? I'm sure you've got many other thousands of members in the same sort of boat. Here's how it could work. We go back and forth, come up with some idea, and then, create something that didn't exist in the world before this. So, I think.
So talking about coming up with all these new ideas, a lot of people know you as StatusMatch.com, all the rest. You've recently rebranded to Loyalty Status Co., which many people probably wouldn't have heard of or have no idea what it's about. But you've just sort of talked about all these other avenues and areas and products and just initiatives that either brands are looking for or frequent flyers are looking for. Can you talk about the rebrand and the new name? And does that mean StatusMatch is no more, or what's the story there?
StatusMatch is still the hero product. It's what people know us for. It's very successful, does very well. We still launch a bunch of new brands on StatusMatch all the time, more than a dozen now. And the rebranding to Loyalty Status Co. is more reflective of the other products that we already have in market. These are not like, oh, let's do this. These are stuff that exists today with big airlines. We first launched this big thing with Frontier about almost a year ago now. To help them acquire new credit card customers is basically the idea. If you had a Travel Rewards credit card in the USA, pay a fee, Frontier would just give you status straight off the bat. You didn't need it wasn't a status match. You didn't have to have status anywhere else. You just had the right type of credit card. And that was a quasi kind of credit card co-brand acquisition play there. Obviously cash as well. We did a bunch of that stuff. We've launched the world's first elite status subscription product that people actually want to buy. Ultra successful. Launched at Royal Air Morocco in I think it was September, October last year. Really doing amazing. Got other brands, about to jump on that too. And we've got a couple other things that are super, super exciting. And so the rebrand is really just to be more reflective of what we're doing, which is more than just StatusMatch and monetizing status in different ways, commercializing it in we just see opportunities everywhere. I think the industry has done very well in points and miles monetization over the last 25 years. It's done extremely well. Hat off to the industry, done a good job. Status is the next thing, is the next points and miles type scenario. And, we're riding that wave. There's a little bit of an education piece to show airlines, hey, you're actually a business guy or stuff of it. There's a bit of that. And a bit of, just trying to make travelers' lives a little easier with products that they actually want. Because I can tell you, as a gold member, I don't need to be sold seats and bags in the booking flow. I've never once purchased one of these things. I've probably purchased 2,000 flights in my life, I think. Maybe a bit less. I want excess baggage. Never once have I ever wanted insurance. You know what I do?
I know you and I have mouthed off this on these topics a lot over the years. But, for all the talk of personalization in the industry, the reality is most airlines are absolutely hopeless at delivering it in the booking funnel, and hotels for that matter. Absolutely hopeless. And yet, I would think that there are things that I am prepared to pay for, that I might be interested in doing. But even if you offered it to me at this point, because you've bombarded me with stuff that's not even relevant, I already get free access to the lounge. I already get free bags. So why are you trying to sell me that stuff? I already have travel insurance. Why are you selling me that? And you know all this. And this is not just like, well, you didn't know I had a travel insurance policy, or you didn't know I had lounge access. You have my status. You know that it gives me lounge access or free bags. It's and you know where I'm going, by the way. You know the destination I've just booked for. You know how many people I've just booked for. Make the upsell relevant. And this really just goes, we could probably back that out and say that goes to all communications to members, doesn't it? If it's relevant, there's no limit to what you can offer, and, whether it's communications or upsells or whatever else. But relevancy is something that's still sort of sorely lacking. So clearly, I think your point is right, that there's a lot of room for improvement. And let's be honest, airlines have shown that they really can't do this themselves.
To be fair, I come back to an innovation angle, I think. And this is somewhere we've seen a lot of success in. I was talking to an airline just the other day. There's a loyalty guy on WhatsApp, and he's like, Mark, we could do this ourselves. We could do the status match. We could do this. Why should we work with you guys? I said, mate, can you get it up in a week? And he laughed. He goes, maybe a year. I could do it. I said, right, okay. So basically, you're just gonna lose out on a year of revenue, lose out on all the expertise. You build it as a cost, obviously, to do it as well. It'd be silly to try and do it yourself. And I think a lot of big brands need to leverage the amazing talent, technology, and partners that exist in the ecosystem a lot more. We're famously known for getting brand new innovative products that don't exist up in a week. This is just what we do. A week, 2 weeks, like less than a month is really normal for us. Mm-hmm. When you get these big legacy technology say, roadmap, this is a 6-month project. Like, guys, we've launched 6 things at that time. Like, it's just too slow. And the world is moving faster than ever before. There's so much opportunity, especially in the status space. We just see it everywhere. I talk to brands all the time. And they're like, I wish we could do this, We're held back by this technology. We can't do this. And, I feel that we're on the cusp of something really big here. And sometimes I feel some of these brands just need to, just chill a bit and go, you know what? We can't do everything. We shouldn't try and do everything. We don't build our own aeroplanes, right? We go to Airbus and Boeing and buy it from them. We fly the damn things. So let's go to the equivalent of Boeing and Airbus for technology stuff. Let's go to the experts, and that's in each individual area. So like we're really good at status stuff, right? So we say anything status, come to us. You want points and miles? Go to points.com, go to Plusgrade, go to all these other companies around that are really good at what they do.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. We're coming to time, but I've got a final question too. But I also just want to mention that, Loyalty Status Co, you guys have been big supporters of the Loyalty Summit. You guys are going to be attending and speaking this year in both Chicago and London. For those that don't know, loyaltysummit.com. London, it's up on the website now, and I actually think that the new agenda is going up very, very, very soon. The 5th to 6th of June in London is going to be our first Loyalty Summit event this year. And then in Chicago on September 11th, 12th, which is the agenda is not published as yet, but we're busy putting something very exciting together for you for both of those events. So stay tuned. Subscribe to the newsletter, obviously, if you want to learn more. Loyalty Status Co. will definitely be there and be speaking. Thank you for your support. But I want to ask you just as we go, it's 2024. We're starting the new year strong. Predictions, big trend, travel loyalty for 2024. What do you think?
If you look at the last 20 years, try and predict the next 20 years, I don't think much is going to happen.
Forget the next 20 years. Let's just think about what can we think about short term for this year.
However, if I look at the last year of our business and try and predict the next 1 year of our business, I see significant change. Improvements. They're baby steps for airlines, but big steps for consumers. I think when airlines and brands start aligning with their customers more, really listening to customers, like, what do you want? Okay, Dave, I'm not going to sell you travel insurance. I'm going to sell you something you actually want. Personalization is being talked about for God knows how long now, a bit too long. I think it's time for less talk and more action. And it's not necessarily about big data and machine learning. It's not necessarily about that. It's about what's the thing that Dave wants. And you know what? Dave probably wants more status credits when he flies. Let's just sell him that. It's not difficult. We know he's had status for the last 20 years. Let's give him more of it. And that's that section of the audience taken care of. Let's just do that first. Start there, because people with status spend more, fly more, the right type of money. They're typically in business class or high yield economy or coach fare. They've got the capacity to pay more. So let's start selling them. Let's start selling stuff they want. Let's start selling them stuff that we can. Let's dream up new products. And if we have to go to external parties, let's do that. If we can do it internally, great as well. I think we're going to see more of that, because new stuff aligns with being consumer centric. It aligns with stuff that they want. And at the end of the day, if you make your customers happy, you run a good business, you make even more money.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark, from Lodi, Mark Wright Smith from Lodi Status Co, StatusMatch.com for those who know him. Thank you very much for joining. Obviously, we could talk about this for hours, but we've got plenty of other opportunities to talk this year. I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more. Thanks for coming along. For those that are not on our newsletter or whatever else, LodiSummit.com and marking your calendar for London, 5th to 6th of June, Chicago, 11, 12 September. Our theme for this year is Beyond Loyalty. We're going to be talking about innovative strategies, insights, visions to propel your loyalty programs into the future. So it's going to be an exciting year of discussions. LoyaltySummit.com. Make sure you sign up there. You can check out our other Loyalty Leader podcast episode, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.